So,
So,
give me the thought process for homeschooling for you guys.
for us,
Yeah. What was the conversation like? What were the factors to consider? All that.
it kind of wasn't like, it was like a distant potential option thing for us. But like every other life-altering important decision, it happened on a dime. Glenlee had no real plan to be a homeschooler. She wasn't really expecting it. She kind of had like, whatever. But she was homeschooled. And there was obviously benefit to it.
How long was Glenlee homeschooled for?
I mean, I think her whole life, I don't think she's never been to public school. So
I didn't
all the
know
way
that.
up to college. Yeah. She was a homer for sure.
Wow. Okay.
Uh,
Were the rest of her siblings?
Yeah. I don't know if any of them went to public school. I don't think any of them did. I know the eldest, no, none of them. They were all homeschooled. But at some point, I started to see the writing on the wall. I started to realize parents are being labeled and categorized legitimately as like potential terrorists because they were going to PTA meetings and board meetings and conference meetings and stuff like that. And they were listing concerns. Hey, we don't think you guys should be able to do this. There's this idea in the leftist zeitgeist that the children belong to the community. That's like not true. It's true in a sense that like if you have a shared culture and a shared community, then like you have expectations that there's a sense of safety. Someone else is going to look after your kids. Someone else is going to help promote their life.
It takes a village.
Yeah.
Like, that sort of spirit. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's like, I think about, as soon as you said that, that was one of the uniquely defining characteristics of the American project.
Yes.
Was that we were going to construct a society which existed for the people rather than a people to exist for the government rather than
Absolutely.
society. But that was
by
like
the people
part
for
of
the people.
Yeah, like that was actually like categorically different than what had been done in the past. You know, the proletariat and the bourgeois is built off of the idea essentially that the proletariat belongs to the bourgeois for their subjugation and use. So yeah.
There was that cultural, I think you would call it it's a contract, a social contract that you would expect your values to be upheld within your community. And so that's why parents would walk outside and say, hey, dinner time whenever the lights come on, because they would be wherever and it wouldn't matter. You wouldn't have to keep inventory of where your children were. But I noticed that we were being ostracized as parents by these revolutionaries and that you were the problem when they were teaching stuff that you had qualms with, objections to. And I was like, this seems like a very large problem to me, especially considering what I believe to be my very reasonable worldview beliefs. Like historically, right? God is real. Murder is bad. We should take care of one another. We should love one another. And there are objectionable behaviors that ought to be pushed to the outskirts of society, if not removed from society. And that is standard in humanity, by the way. But something happened, and now it was reasonable to teach a 4-year-old how to perform fellatio in public school. And that it sounds like a joke.
We've always both felt that way about like the public school, right? Like just the government funded institution, the mandatory nature of it, all of that. But I think a lot of what's made me want to do it more recently and feel like more led to it is the removal of her from that environment, yes, but just a more, I think, like original intent of the child being with mom all the time.
Yeah.
You know, like
Yeah.
take out, so like even if school wasn't like insane right now, right?
Yeah.
Like even if all those insane worldviews and stuff weren't becoming more and more prevalent, just the mere fact that Adeline would wake up and spend the day with mom. And then of course, obviously, but there is the insulation that comes from that.
Yeah.
Against those insane doctrines and ideologies, at least during the most formidable years, giving her time to develop robust, well-articulated defenses against those ideas that she's going to inevitably encounter. The calculus, right, that I think a person has to do when they're saying, should I put my kid in public school or should we make whatever sacrifice we have to make? And it is a sacrifice to some degree to homeschool our kid is, do I believe that my child's success will be most attributed to their academic performance, or is there something else which will be more predictive of their success in real life?
Yeah.
For a lot of people, they believe that your success is best predicted by your achievement academically.
Yeah.
And I say academically because I think also what a lot of people do is they conflate education with academia,
Yes, yeah.
with modern day academia. And they do so in error.
Yeah.
They aren't the same thing. There are plenty of other avenues for actual education. At the beginning of a conversation like that, I would want to say from the outset, I reject the premise of the question.
Yeah.
Because the premise of your question is that Adeline's success in the real world is best predicted by the level of education she receives, insofar as education is
Going to a public school.
going to a public school and performing well on standardized tests.
Yeah.
And there's just no data to support that. Really not.
Here's what data was used to pitch that to the American public, and it's what's in my head and it's what beat into everyone else's head. You'd hear this in 7th grade. People who go to college, on average make $1 million more over the course of their career.
Yep. That's
Here's
what
the
I told
problem.
Jason earlier, yeah.
Going to college is not the same thing as receiving an education. But if you use the full data set of the millions of people that go to college with the express intent of learning a skill, those people are networking. They're in communication oftentimes with the people who will be their employers. They're put into job training programs and preceptorships and so on and so forth. Of course, the large set data would show that trend on average. But education is what you learn. And I am people like the anecdotes, people like Bill Gates who go to college and end up dropping out or whatever because they have these $1 billion ideas. I think those people prove that the college, the institution, is not where the success comes from.
Right.
The relationships is a huge part of it. And then a person's latent competence is a huge part of it. But all that can be fostered in an at-home scenario.
There's no question. I was reading about it because intuitively, right, we've had the conversation. I am absolutely certain that my child's character, her worldview, her work ethic, which are all just aspects of her character, her communication skills, her relationships, her relationship with, yes, her parents and the people closest to her, but God, most importantly, and then everything else that stems from that, right, is most predictive of her success in the world. Yeah. There was a study done from 1921 all the way to 1991, okay? And it followed, and this is exactly how it says it when it explains it to you. It followed high IQ individuals and measured their real-world success as a consequence of their academic success, okay? And they found a correlation between their academic achievement and their income. Mm-hmm. They missed the part where it tells you. They followed high IQ individuals. Yeah. It is IQ that is the strongest predictor of success socioeconomically. But we're talking about socioeconomically. We're talking about income, which isn't the only metric for success. Yeah. And there's multiple other studies you can look at that say there's zero correlation between academic achievement insofar as it leads to higher income, which I would argue that it probably doesn't, or if it does, it's much smaller, that the actual thing to which that could be attributed is IQ, but that it doesn't correlate with life satisfaction or happiness. Mm-hmm. It doesn't correlate with higher success rate in marriage, right?
Moral fortitude or whatever.
Right. Like those things that are actually real predictors of what I would say is a more full picture of what success looks like. And there's another study that said a much better predictor as far as that study was able to determine was character relationships, which are best fostered in my house. Yeah. Between me and my wife and my daughter. If you answer the question, right, the initial question, well, do I believe that my child's success in the real world is best predicted by their success academically, then it is an easy question. And I can understand why somebody would say then, well, I want my kid to be in a public school system, because it probably is the case that teachers at the local school are better at teaching mathematics than I am. Mm-hmm. They're probably better at teaching my daughter math than me. But if I don't believe that that actually is the greatest predictor of her success, then I ask myself, okay, what is? And we determine that, like I said, it's what's character development, relationships, worldview. Do I believe for half a second that anybody in that school is going to do a better job with my daughter at that than me and my wife? No. 100% no.
That speaks to a big issue of mine. The big problem from, I think, my perspective and probably yours with the American school system is the same thing with the rest of American culture. It's that we've outsourced absolutely everything. Mm-hmm. Our economy is outsourced. Yeah. We consume so much crap. You would assume that we would be the world's generator of whatever it was. Yeah. We spent the better part of 50 years sending all of our manufacturers overseas. And we didn't stop with manufacturing. We didn't stop with our economic and our socioeconomics. We outsourced parenting. With truancy laws, we made public school mandatory. So, it seems like there's a veil of freedom because you don't have to go to public school. You can homeschool and go to private school. But in our 2-income trap, mothers and fathers have to be, on average, mothers and fathers have to be in the workplace, which naturally means you are now priced out of homeschool because your time is now more valuable in the workplace. Mm-hmm. So then we've outsourced our parenting to the government.
Mom goes, well, I want to go to work to make more money. Yeah. And the reason that I'm justifying and the metric I'm using to put my kid in school is so that they can make more money, which is not true. Yeah. So it's not even true. Yeah. But even if it was, what you're saying is that's the most important metric for success. is how much money they earn. So I'm willing to dispense with the character development, to dispense with that which is probably actually most predictive of real, meaningful success, life satisfaction, and purpose, right? In pursuit of me making more money, while my kid also goes and does something that they think they can make more money at, right?
Oh, yeah.
It's like, that's the wrong rubric. And that's what I told Sarah, like, I'm not running that same algorithm.
Yeah, no.
You're showing your hand a little bit that we actually have a fundamentally different worldview.
Yeah, yeah.
Or at least insofar as how clearly each of us are seeing the outcomes of these respective courses of action. Like, maybe we don't really. Maybe if we sat down and talked about it, you would go, oh, wow, like, you know what, that you're right. But insofar as you're making judgments about how to go forward, we're starting from two different places.
So I think, just to be the devil's advocate, and truly the devil's advocate, because the school system is darn nearly satanic. I will give credit where credit's due. One of the ways that you avoid poverty is you graduate high school, or at least a high school equivalency. But it's not the high school itself that's creating the success.
Right.
It's the fact that there is a baseline level of competence
100%.
you need to pass, right? It's like you have to turn your work in enough to where your grade level allows you to graduate.
It is whatever base level of character development is required to go through the annoying process of subjecting yourself daily to showing up on time, doing the work, and getting it done. It isn't that it's
is
some
the success
sort of
itself.
Intellectually strenuous test that shows these people to be intellectual titans, right? It's, hey, you went through some degree of growing up, right? Some elementary level of growing up, which just says you have to get up in the morning, come do this thing, show up on time, and complete some basic assignment. Whatever degree of competency, like you said, allows you to do that is also applicable in the real world.
Oh, 1-to-1. Showing up. That's right. How do you succeed at work, right? How do you not get fired? How do you hold a job? You show up.
Basic jobs. Exactly. At entry-level jobs, you do the same thing that...
School.
Right.
So, like, saying that high school is directly contributes to someone's competence, that's a false equivalence. People who are competent enough to pass high school are competent enough to pass in the real world, because, financially at least, because it's the same measure. It's the same thing that you're trying to accomplish. It's like me saying, I have a special group of people. You are inducted into my organization once you make $13 million a year. You're inducted automatically. You can't even turn it down. So then I say the way to make $13 million is to be inducted into my organization.
Right, exactly.
And it's the biggest predictor of how successful you are. It's like, well, the metric is getting there first.
Right.
And that's what high school is doing. So like it's saying, be married before you have kids and then graduate high school. And there's like a 3% chance you were under the poverty line. The vast majority, it's not even close. It's like 99% actually, of people who pass those two tests end up being financially successful. By that I mean above the poverty line.
And that's why it makes it hard, by the way, probably for a lot of people to go, I don't understand how not getting my girlfriend pregnant is going to all of a sudden make me make more money. It's like, no. Again, subjecting yourself to the consistent discomfort of putting aside your particular desires in pursuit of a greater good long term is building for you the character which is useful and practically applicable to the real world where you go and then compete.
Yeah.
That's what it is. One comes before the other. Did anyone who came and brought those statistics to us, right, that came and said, hey, you're on average you make $1 million more over the course of your lifetime if you go to college?
Yeah, what about your life?
Why? Okay, why?
Yeah, explain.
Can elaborate, It's like, well, no. We just want you to buy into the system. Like, we're just trying to buzzwords. Here's a thing that sticks. At 29 years old, we still remember something we were told at 11, right? Okay, but why? That seems like an important question.
I wonder if you could equalize for the education, but like you had a control group where it's all high IQ people. Like you said that same study, right?
Yeah.
I want to see that in the real world sense. Like I want to see how high IQ is someone who is not college graduated or not even high school graduated with a high IQ and how much they earn. I think what's happening in the modern world is we have way more avenues to create revenue streams. So people who are doing YouTube and creating their little drop shipping sites or whatever, who are just competent individuals, are now starting to even create parity between the two.
Yeah, I want to see 100,000 human being study where 50,000 of them didn't go to college, 50,000 of them went to college, and the groups have like an average IQ of like 127.
Yeah, I would love that.
And show me which group comes out better, and I almost would bet money. I almost would bet money the group that didn't go to college might actually be outperforming them socioeconomically.
Well, if you factor in
I
their
believe if you controlled for the IQ,
yeah.
I'm not certain that there isn't some degree of handicap that does not result from. I mean, look. So did I tell you about the study or the article that I read where of the top 10 Ivy League schools, only 2 of them produce for graduates an average income of $100,000 a year, and it's only after a decade in the real world, in the marketplace?
Yeah, you told me about that. That's the craziest thing I've ever heard in my life. Yeah, yeah.
That is a horrific ROI.
Yeah.
Oh, and that same article led me to another article. Something like 49% of master's degree recipients are worse off financially than if they had not gone.
Well, Dylan, that makes sense because if you spend $300,000 on an education to wait 10 years to make $100,000, you are in a very bad place financially.
Right.
Because if you put 100% of your untaxed earnings towards your college degree, at that point, you are spending 3 years not eating or living anywhere and putting all of your untaxed money towards your student loans. Right. Not only that, it accrues.
And sacrificing the years of income earning and the real world experience and the development. Think about I've been working professionally now for 10 years.
Yeah.
That's all that I've got.
Yeah.
I've got 10 years. The alternative is I could have gone and spent $300,000. And then just now, I might start making $100,000 a year.
Well, let's even say
that's wild.
Let's even say,
and look, use an average deal, right? You get out of school, and when I first got out of school, just by working hard, I was making $55,000 or $60,000 a year at 18. In 4 or 5 years, there's your $300,000 you spent. So now you're $300,000 to the positive.
Yeah.
And after 5 or 6 years, if you start making $50,000 or $60,000 a year and you're working hard, you're applying again the things which I believe are actually determinative of success in the real world: character, communication skills. I'm going to be the person. I'm going to do that which I can control, which might not be my natural born skill, right? But I'm going to be here early every day. I'm going to have a good attitude when I come in. I'm going to be the kind of person that says, "Hey, I'll do the thing. You tell me what I need to do, and I'll learn how to do it." That person in 90% of environments rises to the top pretty quickly.
Yeah.
So the likelihood that you're still making $50,000 or $60,000 a year after 5, 6, 7 years is very unlikely.
Yeah.
The math just doesn't work. It's becoming a worse and worse and worse investment every year.
I think those people are I call them technocrats. And I think that's what it is. It's not just that you're valuing education or that you're incorrectly assuming that education is necessary. And I'm not even using the right term. Education, I believe in education attributing to success, but I'm specifically talking about the institutionalized form of education that we're talking about.
Which I think academia is the best thing.
I
think that's...
Academia works, yeah. Those people, they're galvanized towards that thing. They're like nodes who are created to make that thing thrive. They live on the anecdote that some of these people are on TikTok, hey, how much do you make a year? I make $375,000 a year. Okay, what do you do for a living? I source guavas from the Dominican Republic to feed one family in San Francisco. So there's those very weird niche bubble jobs, but the vast majority, it's I have an art degree from Juilliard. I'm a barista. I have a humanities degree or philanthropy degree. I have a doctorate in whatever, and I make $112K a year, and I live in Manhattan.
Yeah, and the person who has that niche job, they get that niche job as a consequence of relationships.
Yeah,
probably more often than not. I think when those studies say relationship, character development, all that really ends up being most predictive, right? Like emotional intelligence and all that. I'm not 100% positive if they're talking about the relationships which you develop with people that get you in the door places, or if they're saying the quality of your relationships and your ability to foster good relationships. It's both.
I would wager the former primarily, though, as far as...
It's probably what they're talking about, you think?
Yeah, because, that's every single job that I've gotten...
of success, yeah.
For me, I have no education, and there's been zero demonstration of competence before becoming an adult. Zero demonstration of competence my entire life. Every job that I've ever gotten, school was not on my list of things that I've put, my qualifications. Every job that I've gotten, for the most part, has been college degree required. Never brought it up. If you ignore it, they just think it's a given because they put it on the application.
Well, and I would say the latter leads to the former.
Sure, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Your ability to communicate, foster good relationships and all that.
It's fundamental,
develops the relationship that then leads to the opening of the door, right?
Yes.
Not always. I think what happens is a lot of kids who are emotionally and mentally underdeveloped and immature, it's an easier prospect for them to say, okay, I'm going to suck it up and spend 4 or 5, 6 years here, spend a bunch of money, I'm going to be in debt, and this piece of paper is going to purchase for me the life I want. Mm-hmm. And that's a lie. Mm-hmm. It's not going to do that. It might give you some extra firepower, right, out there on the battlefield of life, but it's the willingness to subject yourself to the uncomfortable is that which grows your character.
Absolutely.
It is unavoidable in life.
It's gospel.
Yeah.
It's literally the gospel of Jesus
Jason
Christ.
was telling me this. He was just talking about it. He said, I think it's deer. When they see a storm coming, if that storm's coming off in the east, they run the opposite direction.
Yeah.
Okay? To avoid the storm.
And
the storm is moving in the same direction as they're running.
Yeah.
And they're prolonging their experience in the storm.
Yeah, because
of their trying to avoid it.
Yeah.
He said buffalo, when they see a storm coming, they run straight for it.
Yeah.
Because they pass through it more quickly.
So sick. That's bars.
That is absolutely... and I said to Jason, I said, there's a life lesson there. He said, absolutely there is. That's what we do.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
That's the thing we wrestle with is in an effort to avoid discomfort, we prolong suffering.
Exactly.
We do it all the time.
It's like delayed gratification is the gospel.
Yeah.
It is pick up your cross and follow me. What you're doing is you're saying, Jesus boasts in his church saying they love not their life unto death, meaning they sacrifice their life. The only tangible thing in your entire experience on this side of life is that this exists. Okay?
Yeah.
There is a question mark. As much faith as you have, there still is a question mark because you haven't experienced the other side of eternity. Okay? So for you to say, okay, God, I will put this life in a blender if necessary so that I can serve your kingdom, serve your people, serve your church. Let's say you're full financially. Christ will still ask of you for your sacrifice. If you're full financially, you will be in compromised positions, but you will still have to answer the call that Christ put in your heart. If he says, I need you to give $100 to this lady on the street, and if you've been a moron financially, you still gave that $100 to that person, you are suffering a lot more. But regardless, you are still sending something into the future, into eternity, delayed gratification. Whereas the deer who are running away from the storm, right? It's, I want to enjoy right now where I'm not being rained on as long as possible. The best possible version of my current experience.
Yeah.
Gospel, exactly.
100%. Sarah doesn't like that I ever watch them, which I understand. There's a bunch of, what do they call them, 304s? on whatever podcast.
We call them hers.
What do they call them? I think that's what they call them. A lot of the conversations are around like body count and like why does it matter and all these girls saying why does it matter and they genuinely don't understand. Yeah, they don't get it.
Yeah.
They're like, why do men want? It's weird that men want like a virgin. First of all, no, it's not. Okay. First of all, if that's all it was about,
biologically, just
right. If that's all it was about was just the fact that woman had not been touched by another man sexually, it would not be weird. Yeah. First of all, let me just full stop. That's enough. However, that's not the only reason. Yeah. Okay. And a reasonable guy who meets a girl who he likes and he's interested in probably in most cases doesn't dispense with the idea of pursuing her on the basis of the fact that, well, I was okay with 3 guys touching her, but not 9. That's not what it is. Yeah. I would say, and I may be giving too much credit to some guys, but the actual spirit of that hesitancy, I think, is confirmed by the idea that a woman's inability, and a man's for that matter, okay, this is both genders, because only 2 exist.
The 2 legal,
right?
That's not us. That's not us.
Right.
That's the president.
Right.
That's the
government.
Just the
law, right?
It's federal government. I'm not going to go against the federal government.
Both genders, your ability to push away your immediate physical desires in pursuit of that which is better is predictive of how you're going to handle conflict in your marriage, how you're going to handle the inevitable waning of the emotional, the euphoric infatuation when that leaves, how you're going to handle that. Are you going to go looking for that physical satisfaction again? Mm-hmm. Are you going to go looking for those feelings again, right? How you're going to handle the temptation that inevitably is going to arise when you, at your new job, you meet somebody who's attractive and they seem to be interested in you. Because this is the deal. If you're a person who's slept with 47 people over the course of your, the last 7 years of your life, 8, 9, 10, 12 years of your life, you've been practicing giving into the most base desires of your flesh.
You've strengthened that muscle.
You have strengthened it up. So how foolish are you to actually believe that now that you are married, because you entered into this agreement, that you have what it takes to operate accordingly? You don't. You have literally practiced the very opposite of that your entire adult life. That is why it's more important than the mere fact that, hey, the grossness of it, right?
Yeah.
It's what it says about what kind of mom you're going to be, what kind of wife you're going to be, what kind of partner you're going to be, how you're going to handle money, how you're going to handle stress, how you're going to handle conflict.
Yeah.
All of that, every bit of it. It's, are you a person who makes principled-based decisions at the expense of your flesh and your comfort in pursuit of that which is optimal, or do you do whatever feels good in the moment?
That's so poignant. I think that's exactly true. And to circle back, another qualm I have with the public school system, that's very central, even though there's way more stuff, more reasons why that delayed gratification in your sexual relationships is beneficial. For me, the public school system enforces the opposite of that truth. Think about sex education. You're like, sex education saves lives. It does. I would love to see all the data on that sex education, but it's not merely education on it. They teach you like how to do it. And this is even whenever it was actually innocent, trying to protect people, because they don't assume everyone's a Christian. That's why they're there. What they do is they teach you the safe way to practice this thing, because you're going to go out and do it anyways. So like for me, it's my job. I haven't outsourced that. It's my job to teach my kid what the proper contextual sexual relationship looks like.
Yeah, that's a good point. These kids, it's crazy to see every 6 months or 8 months, they hit this new level. With those new levels comes an increase in the inquisitive nature, right? They start to notice things they haven't ever noticed before. And those things happen oftentimes, if you're in the public school system, around other 5 or 6-year-old kids or your teachers, and questions come up. And those oftentimes are probably fundamental moments in the construction of your child's worldview and their understanding of reality. The very first moment where Adeline asks, was about Santa Claus. Is Santa Claus really real? The first response she gets is probably going to stick pretty good.
Yeah.
The very first one she gets. Take that and, apply to it all kinds of different questions and all kinds of different, situations. And it's like, I had never had this realization until just about a month ago on that same kind of topic where did I tell you? Adeline was in the car with Sarah and Adeline said, Mom, Jack Frost is real.
Yeah.
She said, my teacher told me Jack Frost is real. And she said, and Mom, are you going to believe in Daddy? Or are you going to believe in my music teacher? And there was nothing nefarious about the music teacher's intentions. There's nothing nefarious about the principal of that school. These sweet teachers, they get up and they go, and a lot of them are absolutely doing what they feel called to do and what they probably should be doing, right?
On the lowest dollar the public can muster. Absolutely. And having to come out of pocket for a lot of their resources.
100%. So in no way, shape, or form is me saying this an indictment of the teachers themselves. I think they're awesome. Adeline's teacher is phenomenal. She's great. We love her. She's awesome. But the very structure of the public school system, in that we, like you said, outsource, we delegate that role to this other group of people, implicitly states to our children that that's where you go to learn things.
Yeah.
That is the authority on teaching you what to believe. It doesn't have to be stated. We send our kids somewhere else for them to be taught things. Yeah. So it doesn't have to be said out loud. It's communicated to Adeline. Mama, are you going to believe Daddy? Or are you going to believe my teacher at the school where my parents, you guys send me there?
She's appealing to authority immediately. She's appealing to, this is a techno.
Her brain is just operating rationally in that she's just taking the implication and applying it. Like when I realized that too, I was like, I loathe that.
Yeah.
That's horrible.
Yeah. You remember the teachers we had?
Yeah.
The amount of trust a child is giving to some of these people, there are phenomenal teachers.
There are.
But by the time you got to our age in middle school and high school, you had 8 of them. 8, let's say 5. And knowing people, 80% of them dog water. With proficiency, with intention, with morality, with their own self-control, they're diddling children out there. They're like ditty party baby. Yeah, we had a couple.
Like three teachers that were teachers.
So the trust that we've placed in this institution, it doesn't make any sense because it's like a meat grinder.
Yeah.
People assume that all the bad kids just flunk out of school. There's a lot of truth to that. The bad kids who fail morally or behaviorally or educationally, there's some truth to that because there's intrinsic temperaments and abilities that are being measured here. But I would wager that plenty of these kids are being pushed out because of the school system itself is not geared towards their sensibilities. So why are we giving this thing so much credit, so much love, when there's no indication that it's intrinsically beneficial? Before we had a Department of Education, we were the world leader in education. And the more money we spend, the worse off we are, which makes me angry because...
What are we now? What are we?
I don't know. We're mediocre, like 14 or way lower now.
I listened to it yesterday. I don't know what all group he was talking about, but of 40 something, we are dead last.
Are you serious?
Yes. And I was like, what? What are you talking about? He's saying, hey, we're gonna fix that, and I love that. That's great. But like, it's not gonna get fixed fast enough for me. No. And here's the deal: what even he is talking about is measuring academic performance. Yeah. And again, I reject that is what is most determinative.
But it sucks to suck at it though. but we're terrible.
Sure, I'm not, again, and like you said, obviously we like education. What we do in our spare time is we read and study theology and philosophy and politics and all that stuff.
Yeah.
Like, but it's much more autodidactic. I reject the conflation that education is modern day American academia. I'm sorry. If you have bought that lie, then that's fine. You can buy it, I guess, but I'm not interested. It's the same sort of thinking that says people who are educated are smart. You know, it's like, okay.
There's a beautiful video on Jubilee. I'm sure you've seen it. They communicate, they talk, and then they rank each other based on what they think their rank and file intelligence is.
It's fantastic.
And you know, there's this one person. This is one of the greatest videos in the history of the internet, who is a doctor of some sort of, you know, biological study, and her company she works for was producing vaccines and COVID vaccines, and she's just this high level of
very proud of it.
Subject matter expertise. She was yapping about, oh yeah. And then there's this good old boy who just was wearing camo, was like army. He was like, oh, whatever, you know. And they ranked him like last or near last on everyone's ranking. Yeah. And it was almost inverse, where the lady with the doctorate was the second dumbest or the dumbest. Mm-hmm. No, she was dead last.
She was dead last, I believe.
Yeah, dead last on IQ.
They picked some pretty high IQ individuals though.
Sure, yeah.
Because she was the very lowest, and I think she was like 112.
Well, she's smart, but she's extremely good at doing.
But the guy who she said was like stupid
was brilliant. Yeah,
was like 124 or something like that.
And then I think the Asian was first place, right?
He was.
Yeah.
Right? And so humble.
Yeah.
So humble.
So
like he was
humble.
like, and like wise. Like the stuff he said was just like solid, you know?
Yeah. So I think that goes to show, I think there is a false conflation with American academia and education, and it's just not the case. Think about it this way. There's never been an American crisis that didn't have a highly educated person at the center of it as the cause. Wuhan lab of whatever virology institute of, you know, whatever in Wuhan, everyone working with that debacle, every single one of them are subject matter experts in a very difficult scientific field. Every one of them. Every financial collapse, every single one is caused by government or war or some sort of famine. Every famine is caused by government corruption and their failures and their failings. So I completely agree with you. I disagree with the conflation, but I think it's worse than that. I think it's nefarious sometimes. I think education is nefarious in the American system. People are going to watch this and think we're just like the brosphere. Take your kids out of school, put them on raw milk, which all that's good. Do it. Put them on raw milk and have them exercise and beat up on one another.
Yeah.
And I think that's fine.
If they're boys, yeah. I think
why not?
I think that's probably like pretty solid all the way up until they're like 6, 7, 8 years old. I think that's probably all they need, actually.
Yeah.
It's probably pretty good.
In my effort to create a bridge and a connection between myself and the people, the dissenters.
And like working with dad a little bit.
A lot of it, I would wager. But in my effort to create a bridge between me and people watching who are completely dissenting of my opinions, again, learning is very critical. It's important. The virtue of education and the virtue of learning and the people who are involved in the system, there's plenty of them who are solid people. It's just that it's an axiom. It's a complete and utter fabricated belief that this is the way things ought to be. And so whenever President Trump says, or Elon says, we're going to axe the Department of Education, or at least, gut it or make it more streamlined, make it more efficient so we can improve our education system, people look at that and they think, they're ruining it. They're going to make it so much worse. How can you be worse when we spend like 6 times more than the next guy and we are way below them as far as efficacy? I love that sentiment of education, and I think it's important that children are exposed to new ideas and they're taught how to properly contend with those ideas. But it's not public school or a system that is created on the backs of tax dollars with incompetent people, some of which are incompetent. It's not that system that achieves that purpose. It's natural temperament, natural ability, and then the hard work of mom and dad and grandma and grandpa and brother and cousin at the house, at home. Yeah. That's where education ought to be. That should be the primary source of education for our children today, is your efforts as a parent.
We have a tremendous amount of education in our modern world today. We have a tremendous amount of access to it, right? But we have zero wisdom. Like, we have just no wisdom. That's probably another thing that people think, oh, well, isn't wisdom isn't it just like knowledge? No, it is knowledge properly applied, meaning applied in the direction of that which is optimal, which obviously is that which is God ordained.
I wouldn't say optimal. I'd say truth. Yeah.
Right. Truth. Yeah. I mean, ultimately, just said in a broad sense, towards that which is optimal in the, like you said earlier, dispensing with that which ought to end up in the periphery in pursuit of that which is optimal. Yeah. And that which is optimal is God. That's extremely broad. What does that mean? What is pursuing God in education for your kid mean, right? Well, I think it means like what we're doing, trying to say, is this optimal? What is most important? When we say education, what is most important for children to learn? Is it most important for children to learn math? Or is it most important for children to learn character development, emotional intelligence, foster a relationship with the Lord, develop discipline? All of the things that would be the way that you would pursue God in that is not saying God's not mad at math. I'm not saying that. Like, that's totally fantastic, and let's have some of those skills, but not at the expense of the other.
Yeah,
Certainly
absolutely.
not at the expense of that which actually affords children a productive, happy, truly successful life and perpetuates good ideas and maintains the very structure of civilization. I would say that's all probably pretty godly. You know, that's all pretty well in line with God saying, raise your kids up in the way that they should go, and when they're older, they'll not stray from it. Is he talking about math?
No.
Probably not.
No.
That's probably not what he's talking
The
about.
thing about it is, if you misprioritize education, and let's say all of it is on material truths, material sciences, and the actual curriculum, and your kids get it, but they're deficient in the moral and character side of things, and in their tendencies and habits and worldview, you can learn math as an adult. You know what's extremely hard to do?
Discipline.
Building a moral character as an adult is done by being put in prison. Adults learn moral character by hitting rock bottom.
100%.
By necessary reform, by absolutely being necessary. Kids can learn math and all that stuff intrinsically. Adults can learn math and all that stuff intrinsically. It's necessary to build a foundation for those, material sciences. You need people to become nurses and doctors and even lawyers. That stuff will apply to their thinking. But it's better, in my view, to facilitate and foster those things I think they're just of more substance personally.
I would also wager that the best way to pursue academic achievement in the way that we're talking about it is first to build a solid foundation of character and all that. If you are a person that you have strong moral conviction, you don't have a tumultuous wrestling constantly going on inside of you that's a combination of cultural pressure that you're enduring and the emotional experiences you're having of conflicting ideologies and trying to navigate these things and the frustration that we literally see born out in the world. If you get all that stuff square, you know what you believe. You have a clear picture of reality. You can articulate your positions well. They're defensible. You don't find yourself in uncomfortable positions just having simple sort of conversations about different beliefs and stuff, right? You have a good work ethic. You believe in your ability to take care of yourself as a result of having cultivated strong character and strong principles and all that stuff. You know where you stand as far as important guiding positions go. From that point, it's very easy then to go, all right, I understand the particular orientation of my life. What sort of secondary things can I choose that add to this, that assist in the pursuit of that which is optimal? Like you're talking about lawyers. I have this sincere desire for justice. And because of my clearly defined worldview, I understand what it is and where it comes from. Mm-hmm. And you know what? Because I understand clearly what it is and where it comes from, I have a deep confidence that this is a good desire that I have. And I have some particular skills and some interests that I think kind of actually push me toward, I think I want to go into law, and I can purpose that.
Yeah.
Right? Versus just, well, at 18, I'm just an absolute moron and my parents haven't really taught me anything at all. And I'm going out drinking every night and sleeping with whoever I can. And I'm kind of depressed all the time. I really don't know what my life is about. I have no idea why I'm here, but my parents sent me here and I've got to do something. So I guess I'll do this.
I'm good at math and I figure I can make a lot of money if I become a lawyer.
Right.
There you go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. See how
that person, that is a useless lawyer.
Yeah.
Because they're doing the job. They're of no concern whether they're defending someone who's guilty or innocent. They have no concern with the passion. They don't have a passion for the job. So they're not going and seeking out opportunities to do good. They're just there to collect a paycheck.
Right.
And it's because their foundation is poorly set.
Yeah. So you take those two scenarios. Scenario A, what's the likelihood that in scenario A, that hypothetical that I just made up, but that is a very real possibility if you choose to take that path and, put your life in order in that way, right? Is it more likely that that person ends up spending $200,000 to go into debt for something that they don't end up using and doing? Or is it more likely that the guy who is dealing with freaking depression as a result of drinking and doing recreational drugs and all that stuff, which let's actually be very frank, your worldview has a massive amount to do with the degree to which you interact with those types of things. I asked the chat The old chatster. I said, are there any studies that show direct correlation between a child's academic performance and the overall success in their real lives? Multiple studies examine the correlation between academic performance and long-term success, but the relationship is complex and not entirely linear. While strong academic performance is often linked to higher income, job stability, and overall life satisfaction, it does not guarantee success. Other factors like social skills, adaptability, and resilience play a huge role. Key findings from studies on academic performance and life success. 1. Higher academic performance correlates with higher income and job stability. A meta-analysis by the OECD, the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, found that higher test scores in school correlate with higher earning. The National Bureau of Economic Research in 2011 found that students with higher grades and standardized test scores tend to earn more as adults. Intelligence and academic skills predict career success but not happiness. A Harvard study from 1921 to 1991 tracked high IQ students over their lifetimes. It found that intelligence and academic success contributed to career success but did not strongly predict overall happiness. The Grant study, Harvard 75-year longitudinal study, found that emotional intelligence and relationships were stronger predictors of life satisfaction than IQ or academic success. Soft skills and character matter more in the long run. Angela Duckworth's research on grit shows that perseverance and resilience predict success better than GPA or IQ. A Carnegie Foundation study found that 85% of job success comes from soft skills, communication, leadership, adaptability, while only 15% comes from technical knowledge.
Wow.
A University of Illinois study in 2012 found that conscientiousness, discipline, organization, work ethic was a better predictor of income and stability than IQ. So I also said, what about homeschool kids? Is there a study that compares the real life success of homeschool kids to public school kids? Research comparing the marital outcomes of homeschool. Oh, I said in marriage, and it gave me several other things. So homeschooled adults often exhibit higher levels of civic engagement compared to their public school counterparts. Studies have shown that 71% of homeschool graduates participate in community services, whereas only 37% of general population does. Social and emotional development. Research suggests that homeschooled students performed well in social, emotional, and psychological development. They often score above average in areas such as peer interaction, self-concept, leadership skills, family cohesion, participation in community service, and self-esteem. Character strengths and risk behaviors. Studies have found that individuals who are homeschooled reported greater character strengths and engage in fewer risky health behaviors compared to those who attend public school. As a homeschooled student, which if you're homeschooled, according to that same study, you have stronger character development, stronger social skills. Typically, there's a religious component. You have a higher self-concept, right? Higher self-esteem, all that lends itself to your much lower probability of using drugs and doing all these risky behaviors, as I called it. Your dispensement with that in pursuit of that which is optimal is a much safer and more obviously beneficial, stronger foundation on which to then construct those really secondary factors of your life. What are you going to do for a living? What you're going to do for a living isn't who you are. It's just not. It's not your identity.
Majoring in the minors.
Made it an identity.
Yeah.
We've made it your identity. What you do for a living is your identity, and it's just not. That's a lie. What you do for a living is a tool. It is a tool in order to accomplish a particular set of goals. Obviously taking care of yourself, but hopefully if you've constructed the actual foundation of your life well, then what you do for a living is also purposeful in that it assists you in having a meaningful impact on the world around you. But if you're relying on it to define who you are, divorced from any meaningful foundation on which you constructed it, then you have it in its wrongful place, right?
Yeah. It's like idolatry.
Yeah, and you're putting way too much pressure on it. You're making it a thing from which you're supposed to derive purpose and meaning. And that's really not where it comes from. So then you're probably also much more likely to then be dissatisfied with work and all that stuff because it's not winning for you this wonderful, happy life that you were told that you were going to get if you just get the right degree.
And that leads for me to the response of the disillusioned. People who are still, by the way, they're still bought into the system.
Yeah.
They're just like, we were lied to. They think the system is the problem. And they think that the solution is to upend the system and to revolt. To create a revolution. But their prescriptions after the revolution are to increase the size of the Leviathan, to make a bigger government, spend more money on schools, so that we can make it to where those things actually do now lead to making more money.
A ton of it, right? A ton of it didn't work. So maybe 2 tons of it will
work. Yeah. If we spend twice as much on it, maybe we'll make more money because college will be cheaper if you spend more money, public funds on money, right? Funds on education, I mean.
Like as a person experiencing the poor outcomes of having gone through that, shouldn't you be an opponent of this worldview?
Yeah,
right?
For sure.
Like not, hey, let's have more of it.
No, that's how it goes, man. I hear so many people, so many brilliant people, like brilliant in the sense that's extremely educated in that American institutional system. They're like, this is late stage capitalism. Or whatever boogeyman they can muster. The fact that I went to my education and I have this advanced degree and I have to fight and strive and strive and fight and fight and strive. And even to those who are successful in this venture, who actually are making a ton of money, they're like, when I decided I wanted to have a kid, there was no safety net. There was no parental leave system where I couldn't get paid for a year to spend some time with my kid. That's a travesty. That's evil. The system is messed up. And it's just like, you have hundreds of $1,000s in paid off, I would assume, but some of which are paid off. Hundreds of thousands of dollars in educational loans, and you make a ton of money, and then you decided you want to now pivot and go the polar opposite direction, and you're upset that society isn't paying your high salary while you're at home hanging out with your kid for a year. They're the biggest opponents of their own system, but they want to increase it. It doesn't make sense to me in my head.
That's so clear to me, like when I hear that person, instead of going, oh my goodness, like what a blessing it is that I was able to like get this job and like can make this kind of money and like have access to this, right?
I know like 30 of them.
Yeah, and like let me I'm so thankful for this. But I want to. I'm changing a little bit in terms of what I value. My kid's getting older. I want to spend more time with them. Or my wife, we're about to have another baby. I want to stay home with this kid. Let me go ahead and let me make some practical changes to my life in order to cultivate the environment which allows for me to achieve this particular thing.
Dylan, are you insinuating that your life choices are your responsibility, and that
yeah.
you need to make changes whenever you want to pivot?
I mean, I guess
it's like why can't the world stop rotating or rotate in the opposite direction so that I could achieve my purposes?
That attitude is also, it makes the immediate experiences of your life far worse. And it also ensures that you don't get the long-term benefit, right, as well.
Yeah.
You're right. That people hate the idea that, hey, you need to subject yourself to hard stuff. Well, I made it was about a 4-minute long video about the very idea of subjecting yourself to difficult things for the purpose of the character that it builds and all those things, right? Like that was the general idea. And I made like a 27-second clip from it. The 27-second clip, it had like 4 views for like 3 days, and then all of a sudden it had 500 and something.
Yeah.
And the like ratio was terrible on it.
Yeah.
It was like 40 or 50% of people liked it.
Yeah.
And like that's the worst one of any of the videos that
Really?
I made. On the
That's
long
pretty high,
version of it,
actually. Yeah.
I watch the full video of the people, and it only has like 20-something views, okay?
Yeah.
It has 100% like.
Wow. Yeah.
So all the people who said, oh, I want to go watch this, they liked the message.
Yeah.
But how many people didn't like being told? Because people are looking, Nick, for, I think, like, they want this secret, right? Tell me the secret to success.
Yeah.
Think about all the stupid videos on Facebook about the secret to success and like,
have you heard
do these 2 things and you'll have, like, no, dude, there isn't a secret. You cannot dispense with going through the difficult, uncomfortable, refining fires of adversity, which eliminate your character flaws. They burn up your weak points and bring about the stronger you that then can go out and accomplish the thing.
Yeah.
I think some people think about it like this, and I think my dad even has a little bit of this, as it pertains to like how he perceives God and God's blessings and stuff, okay? It's not that me making a good living is a reward for my work. Mm-hmm. It isn't a reward, it's a consequence.
Yeah.
It's not something that is bestowed upon me.
Yeah.
It is the natural occurrence of the doing of the thing.
So God, I'm doing the right thing. God says, oh, here's
God
wealth.
bestows it upon you, right?
Yeah.
I think that distinction is sort of a helpful informing concept of the Bible verse that talks about God's gifts are irrevocable. And I don't want to go too like theological with that and make too much of that. And I want to be careful because I'm not saying that God doesn't also just omnisciently determine gifts, right? That he doesn't just divinely decree things, right? Period. End of story. I think that he certainly does. But I think also it may be the case that, hey, I set the thing up to work this particular way. And if you just do the thing this way, on average, this will simply be the outcome, divorced from third-party interference, right? Which happens. We live in a dynamic world. I'm not saying it doesn't work every single time. It's not a magic pill. But if you engage in certain activities over time, all areas of your life as a result will benefit.
Yes, in a thought experiment, you can have one man in a vastly infinite world. His one objective is, I'm hungry, I need to eat. Let's say he can't die. Okay? And all you have is sky, sun, water, and one seed on an infinite plane of dirt. He says, I am hungry. He's not bestowed food. He's not given food by God for doing the work of planting the seed and then watering it. It's like the system that God put in place for him to receive food
Functions that way.
Exactly.
Right.
It's like by the sweat of your brow, will you have to eat from the ground?
Yeah.
It's like thorns The plants
Yeah.
and the ground produce thorns
Right.
because of your sin. It's the process of receiving wealth is delayed gratification. It's subjecting yourself to the hard things, to the long term.
Right.
Yeah. Jesse calls it, it's not his term, but long suffering in the same direction or something like that.
Sure, yeah.
Yeah.
No doubt. I had this super sweet customer today, and in no way, I'm not picking on him. It just made me think of this concept. He has a great attitude. We were just talking about how he's almost 40 years old and he really wants to be married. And I think about guys who, and it probably happens usually when they're younger, right? They're like, I'm going to be the good dude. Like, I'm faithful to my girlfriend and like, I'm not cheating on her, right? It's like basic stuff that they're doing, right? It's like, okay, man, you want a cookie?
Yeah.
And like that girl cheats on him, right?
Yeah.
And they're like, man, this doesn't work.
Yeah.
This doesn't work.
Yeah.
And it's like, are you sure? Like, are you sure that there wasn't another factor that you're now not accounting for and you're about to throw the baby out with the bathwater?
Yeah.
Like, are you certain? We do that kind of thing with all kinds of stuff. That's just the easiest to pick on, goofy, like right off the top of my head. But it's like, no, dude, like, but she wasn't doing it. Right? It's like,
yeah.
but that girl wasn't doing the thing.
Yeah.
And a marriage has two people in it. But sort of the underlying problem there, right, is he was like, well, I did the thing. I want the reward for doing the thing. And it's like, no, dude, that's not how life works. You can do it sometimes, and it might not go well because of the presence of other factors. It doesn't mean that that's the wrong strategy to deploy. It could be that there were other factors which you missed. You missed them. And they impeded on the ability of that strategy to work properly and to have success. Or it could also be your deployment was flawed. You may, in fact, actually not have been doing that which you thought you were. Right?
Yeah.
You're saying, well, X strategy doesn't work because it didn't work for me, but you weren't deploying X strategy. You were deploying Y strategy, and you thought it was X.
Yeah.
Right? You did it imperfectly. You were missing some important, like, fundamental. Because again, I'm using this example of this young guy, right, who says, "Well, I didn't cheat on my girlfriend." That's not all that you have to do.
Yeah.
There's more to it. It's a little more dynamic. Great.
Also is a negative
Good
action,
deal.
not a positive action, right? It's like that's not planting a seed.
Right.
It's I didn't light my seed on fire.
Right.
And it still didn't grow.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah,
I think that's that analogy there. I think
Sure, yeah.
But part of the problem in that we take that analogy in the real world because it's very common among Christians, right? It's I did all the right things from the Christian perspective. But it's like, did you? You dispense with a lot of the wisdom of God because you're not living according to his plan. You're just cohabitating and not cheating on your on your girlfriend, and you're thinking that is what warrants my success in this scenario.
And hey, I want to be careful on this because there's people that deal with really hard stuff that's
Extremely,
really difficult to go through, and like I'm not making light of that. But in a lot of cases, it's like if you get to the point where you're saying, "Well, why hasn't God done this for me?" and I've been doing all this stuff, you need to pray more because you don't have the right perspective of you have things flipped that you think about life such that you're like, God hasn't done something for me, right? Like you are way too big in your own head, and God is way too small relative to reality. You need to get that properly reoriented, and that is telling of the fact that maybe you really haven't been doing a lot of the things, right? You haven't actually been developing into the person you think that you are, right?
Yeah.
Here, you can give it to me, baby. Thank you. What is this? Oh, you want some?
I'm good, man. I feasted like a king.
Oh my gosh. You know, in the Near Eastern religion that we come from,
Yeah.
that's like really disrespectful. No, I'm good. I'm not good. So that you can hear it?
You know, do this ASMR.
Well, we can, we'll just kind of take a break for a second.
Okay, I'm gonna grab a bowl of soup and come in here.
Okay. Where's Adeline?
When I got home, she was asleep in her bed.
She's sleeping? Oh,
She was
sweet
asleep
baby.
in her
Will
bed.
you bring me a pineapple?
I got
cider?
lollipops.
I don't want that.
Can
Will
you
you bring me a pineapple cider? And Nick, do you want one?
No, I'm good. Could you bring me $500,000 of unmarked bills? They have to be unmarked, or I won't take them.
If you,
I will not take them.
I will also take that.
Can we choose that lollipop?
Instead, I'm good on lollipops. We're good. Just don't give me anything. If it's not $500,000 unmarked, just don't give me anything.